In the last episode, I mentioned that the barbecue shack and gravel walkway project would have catastrophic consequences on my well. In this episode, I'll explain why. After weeks of dry and hot weather, the soil around the cabin was hard as a rock. And in order to build this barbecue shack and gravel path, we had to dig and move a lot of this concrete-like soil. And the best method to do so was to soften the soil up with water. The water would only penetrate the soil about an inch or two at a time, and then we'd have to soak the soil down again, over and over, until we got to the depth in the soil we needed. So we used a lot of water in the process. After a couple of days into this project, we had no water. And as you can see in the background of this clip of building the barbecue shack, the situation was serious enough for me to call in the local well pump company to find out what the problem was. After I described to him what happened, he had a pretty good clue of what the problem might be, which could be one of three possibilities. And what you're seeing him do right here is start to pull the downpipe out of the well so he can get to the pump. All 500 feet of it. My biggest fear of the three possibilities is that the well was dried up and wouldn't produce water anymore, which has been the case for a few of the wells in the area over the last few years. In order for me to explain what the issue is with my well, we need to go back 25 years in 2000 when my well was originally drilled. I made some highly technical drawings which should help simplify the explanation. On the first day of drilling, they didn't hit water until they got down to 240 feet. But it was only 1/4 gallon per minute. Most wells in my area were producing between 10 and 20 gallons per minute around the 150 to 200 foot level. Since 1/4 gallon per minute is not very much water, they asked if we wanted them to keep drilling. At $16.50 per foot, we reluctantly said yes. The following morning they started drilling again. When they finally got to 500 feet, they didn't hit any more water, and their opinion was they probably wouldn't even if they went deeper. So we both agreed to call off the drilling. But at least we still had the 1/4 gallon trickle at 240 feet. And we just have to be happy with that. Just for fun, let's put my 500-foot well into perspective, and then I'll get back to the point of how the barbecue shack project became such a problem with my well. My well is just as deep as this 50-story building is tall. Kind of shocked me when I thought about it in that way. And another sobering thought is the first 20 feet of the well was dirt, and the last 480 feet was solid granite. 2 years after the well was drilled, they showed up to install the well pump. That's the 7-gallon per minute submersible pump he's preparing. It's number 2 on the list of possibilities of why we weren't getting water anymore.
On your first joint, you go halfway in, tape it. Yeah.
This is the pump attached to the first 20-foot section of Schedule 80 PVC pipe being lowered into the well. The pump will be set at the 480-foot depth of the well, 20 feet from the bottom, in order to keep from sucking up any stirred-up sediment from the bottom of the well. Because the static water level is at 240 feet, the depth where they hit the water level in the well will never rise higher than that. In other words, when the well is filling up with water, it never pushes the water to the top of the well. It'll always stop at that 240-foot level. There was a benefit of drilling all the way down to 500 feet, though. A 6-inch well, which is the diameter of mine, holds about 1.5 gallons of water per foot of well depth. With the static water level at 240 feet and the pump intake at 480 feet, it provided me with approximately 360 gallons of water storage space. And at 1/4 gallon per minute of water flowing into the well, it takes about 36 hours for the well to recover that 360 gallons of water. You may be thinking that I didn't allow enough time for the well to recover the water, but I waited about 18 hours before I made the call to the pump service company. Ty, the name of the young guy pulling the pump out of the well, was nearly finished and about to reveal why I wasn't getting water from my well anymore. I was still convinced it was possibility number 1, my biggest fear, that the well was dried up forever. Although possibility number 2 would be expensive, a burned out pump, which would cost about $1,500 to $2,000 to replace, it would be much better than having no water at all. Ty said there was still water flowing into the well, and he tested the pump and said it was working fine. But the actual culprit ended up being possibility number 3, what he called ballooning, or also known as pipe blowout. This is the first section of PVC pipe attached to the pump at the 480-foot level of the well. And here's the reason why the pipe blew out. With all the water we used over the last couple of days trying to soften up the soil, and including normal use, washing dishes, taking showers, and flushing toilets, the well didn't have enough time to recover. Keep in mind it takes about 36 hours for the well to replenish that 360 gallons of stored water. In other words, the 1/4 gallon per minute intake couldn't keep up with the large amount we were using over the last couple of days. So, when the water level dropped below the intake of the pump kept on trying to pump water up the pipe and caused what water was still in the first section of pipe to get super hot, causing it to melt and eventually split open. It could have also burned out the pump too, but I got lucky there. This was obviously the first time in all these years at the cabin that I'd completely used up all of the stored water in the well. So, Ty replaced the blown out section of pipe, dropped the pump back down the well, and installed a device called a pump saver, which will automatically shut down the pump when the water level drops down to the intake of the pump. And after several hours of work, Ty was on his way home. But the story doesn't end there. A couple of days later, once again, I had no water. So Ty returned, pulled the pump out of the well, and found the first section of pipe blew out again. What happened this time is the pump saver was defective, so he installed a newer, higher quality pump saver and replaced the first section of PVC pipe with a galvanized steel pipe. That seemed to do the trick. Since the well was still struggling to catch up replenishing the 360 gallons of storage water, because I was still here working on projects and using it up faster than the well could produce it, I called a local guy who delivers water, and he came up and filled my well just to give the well a little bit of a running start. But I just couldn't shake the thought in my mind that the well was producing less water and could possibly dry up, even though I had no absolute proof. So I started thinking of every single way that water was being wasted and every possible way I could use water more efficiently, because those few days I didn't have any water really sucked. The first thing I did was pre-order a cistern, which is a water tank that is buried underground. But because of the supply and demand issue caused by COVID, it wouldn't arrive for over a year. One of the biggest users of water is the toilet, but there's no way I'm going to stop flushing or even reduce flushing. So I built this rain catching system that uses two 60-gallon barrels just for flushing the toilet. There's more detail on this project in episode 2. The downside is you have to come outside with a bucket to fill up the toilet tank. But what better place to stand outside and enjoy beautiful scenery while waiting for a bucket to fill up with water? It only takes one halfway decent rainfall to completely fill both barrels, so there's always plenty of toilet flushing water in them to last all season. The excess overflows into a water trough for the wildlife. At nighttime, though, it's not very safe to go out and fill up the bucket at the water barrels, so I just turn the inside cabin water back on to the toilet after it gets dark. Another big waster of water at the cabin is waiting for hot water to get from my tankless hot water heater in the utility closet all the way over to the kitchen sink. I think about 1.5 gallons of water is wasted each time, and the water doesn't really get hot enough to wash dishes properly. So I installed this 4-gallon electric point-of-use hot water heater under the cabinet next to the sink. Now I get extremely hot water at the sink within seconds. It's probably one of the best and most useful upgrades at the cabin. In case you're interested, it's a Bosch Tronic 3000T 4-gallon electric water heater. Pretty easy to install too. It just plugs right into the electrical outlet under your sink. Nearly 2 years after the well pump problems, Ty showed up with the new cistern. I'll just describe real quickly how the tank will benefit water management at the cabin. Before the tank installation, the cabin would draw water directly from the 360-gallon storage of water in the well, running the risk of depleting that water and having to wait for hours for the well to replenish itself. With the 1,150-gallon tank installed, the cabin would draw water from the tank instead of the well, allowing the well to just slowly top off the tank as needed. With that said, Ty got started on the installation of the tank and completed it in less than 1 day,